I released a video recently on 5 free useful tools or plugins that you can use with Advanced Custom Fields in Elementor Pro. Plugins that open up some functionality that's missing, unfortunately, inside Elementor Pro itself. So if you want to check those out, take a look. The link's in the corner. You can take a look at that, and it's also in the description down below. Today, we're going to be answering the question that was raised when I put that video up. What plugins would you recommend? Ones that don't need to be free, but you think are invaluable when it comes to working with ACF and Elementor Pro. So in this video, I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to show you 6 examples of plugins that I would recommend checking out. Some of those are similar plugins with different options, so you can take a choice, whichever one you think matches your priorities. I've also got a couple of honorable mentions towards the end, so stick around and take a look at those. These are plugins that I recommend, but they do have some limitations, not necessarily in the plugin, but maybe in the documentation or the support that you may get afterwards. But I still recommend taking a look at those because the cost involved is minimal, but the functions they offer, well, there's a ton of options there. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the first of these 6 real-world plugins that I recommend checking out. So what is the first one? Well, it's dynamic content for Elementor. Now, if you've been following this channel for any period of time, you'll know that I was sponsored by the developers recently to create 6 tutorials on this particular plugin. Why? Because it has so many options available, and the documentation and the training information, well, it was a little bit lacking, so a lot of people were being put off by that, and they weren't investing the time and effort in seeing what this incredible suite of tools can do. So today we're going to take a quick look at what I'd recommend and why I recommend it, and as always, the link to that playlist of all those tutorials that I've created will be down in the description below. So if this piques your interest, check those out because I think it's going to open up what you think you can do with this plugin, and hopefully it'll inspire you to consider taking a look at this for your own toolkit. Now, from my point of view, dynamic content for Elementor is one of those kind of Swiss Army knives of working with Elementor and custom fields, advanced custom fields. Now, you're not limited to working with just ACF. This will work with some additional tools. However, it's just one of those plugin suites that has a ton of really powerful things that most other plugins that work with Elementor just simply don't have. You want to work with relationships? Very simple. You want to create repeater regions? Even simpler again. There's tons of options available, and I'll give you an example or two in a moment. But if you want to check out this plugin in a lot more detail, I've been working with the developers to create a series of 6 videos that will show you some of the core functionality, some of those things that are not necessarily that easy to get your head around, alongside some free things that I've done that I just think that I'd like to let my subscribers know about because it's just such a great way of working. So for me, great product, not particularly great documentation, although they are working on that. And like I say, in conjunction with myself when I'm creating a series of videos, it is opening up a lot more potential for people that would like to use this plugin but really don't understand or know how to take advantage of some of the great tools you have. Now, I'm working on a really in-depth tutorial on how to set up a car sales business, and that will be released very soon, so I will let you know about that. So check out the channel and make sure you're subscribed to be notified as soon as it's released. But I've used the dynamic content for Elementor quite extensively throughout this particular project. All the normal things you'd expect to see are in place, you know, your typical dynamic data. We've pulled all that in. However, this optional extras area, that's all been set up as part of a repeater region. One of the great things I like about working with these repeater regions is there's a ton of options available to you. So if you don't want to get in and start building additional templates, you can just use some of the out-of-the-box design options. However, if you do want to use some of these templates, which is what I've done in this particular example, you can create anything you kind of want using Elementor Pro's theme builder, and then you can utilize that alongside the repeater regions. So it's a really super simple way of being able to create more complex layers without having to touch a single line of code. If I scroll down a little further, you can see we've got a range of dealers that are associated with this particular vehicle. This is using a simple relationship setup. So we can relate the dealers through to the vehicles in a very simple fashion through the dashboard and make it really simple and easy to be able to link those through to multiple vehicles. Once again, I'm getting the ability to be able to create my own custom templates to use with this. So I'm getting all the freedom, all the flexibility that I need, and the ability to use those templates so I can build a design that I want. I've jumped over to the dashboard now and we're taking a look at the actual template for that individual vehicle. I've got the repeater region set up. I've got that enabled, and you can see on the left hand side all the options we have available. Various different display modes. We can just display the raw output. We can create HTML and use tokens if we want to inside there, or we can use a template, which is what I've done in this example. We can then choose which template we want to use, so you can create multiple different templates and reference those throughout your entire site wherever you want to. We can show row items. We can configure exactly what items are going to be shown. We've got things like options inside here, so we can adjust column and row spacing, how we want to render things out, style them, all those kinds of really cool things. If we scroll down a little further to where we've got this region, which is the relationship region, again, you can see on the left-hand side, it's set out in a really simple fashion. We've configured things through ACF, and then I'm using Dynamic Content for Elementor to easily pull that data in, reference the template that I want to use, and then output that data. So it's really super simple, and I've covered all of these things in their own dedicated videos and a lot more. So I will put a link in the description below so you can check out the playlist if you're interested in taking a look in a little more detail at some of the things you can do with Dynamic Content for Elementor. The next plugin we're going to take a look at is ACF Front-end Forms Pro. Now, the free version of this was listed in my 5 free plugins, and one I would recommend taking a look at, but the Pro version opens up even more options. So let's take a look at some of those options and why I recommend this particular plugin to be added to your toolkit. So ACF Front-end for Elementor does a very, very simple thing, but it does it very, very well. That gives you the ability to upload content, to add new content, all from the front end of your site. The reason I like this over some of the other tools that I've taken a look at and covered in other videos is that this makes the whole process super quick and simple. We don't have to manually go and link through the different fields. We can pull those up pretty quickly, and I've covered this in its own dedicated video, which again I will link in the description below. So if you want to take a look at the videos where I've covered this, please do check those out. Now, the free version gives you a ton of options, which I covered in my 5 free ACF and Elementor plugins video, which will be linked down below. But what the Pro does is it gives you even more. It gives you the ability to easily style all of your forms. It gives you some extra ways in which you can use those forms, so we can do things like options, pages, and so on. It just opens up a whole lot of doors. And talking to the developer, there's a lot of really cool things in the future as well. We're looking at things like the ability to make payment options available. So if you want to allow someone to upload content to your site and you want to charge them for that, then you could use the Stripe payment option, and eventually we'll have the payment option through PayPal as well. So this gives you extra options. There's also in the pipeline the ability to start working with WooCommerce products. Now, it's not going to give us all the functionality of what you'd expect to get inside WooCommerce to start off with. It's going to start off with just simple products. But I know the developer is looking at ways of integrating more advanced content into there as well. So the roadmap for this is looking really, really good. And if you'd like to see the kinds of things you can do with it, I'd recommend taking a look at my video on how I created a fully customized front-end user dashboard. I'll just jump over into that now so you can take a quick look at the types of things I'm talking about and how this would all work. So inside the dashboard, you can see we've got a much more user-friendly way of working. We've restricted it now so end users like your editors, your content creators and so on will automatically come through into their custom dashboard without going in and opening up the normal WordPress dashboard, and we've got all the control we want to give them inside here. So if, for example, they wanted to add a new post, you can click on Add Post. That will open up a new option which gives you a customized form, all being set up and created with this plugin, which we can now allow users to submit posts, and then us as administrators can check in the dashboard once we've got notified the content has been added, and we can approve it if we want to. Obviously, if you wanted to have an automatic approval process, so in other words, all posts were automatically approved, you could do that as well. So you can see we've got all the things we'd normally expect to have when creating a post inside WordPress: the title, the content with the ability to add media, a featured image, categories, and tags, and then we can submit that post to be approved. So really simple. But the power of this comes in even further. If we jump back out of this and go and take a look at like add vehicle, for example, this is a complete custom post type. We're not reliant upon the normal built-in WordPress anymore. We've created a custom post type. Again, we've got the name, the description with add media and the featured image. But then everything else underneath that is all being pulled in from ACF, from our custom fields. So we've got the ability to choose the manufacturer with its taxonomy. We've also got things along the lines of vehicle options, which is the ability to use repeater regions. We can save this a draft. We can review drafts, call those back up. We have a ton of options that are part of this plugin. And this is just scratching the surface of the kinds of things you can do. The future for this plugin is incredibly bright. If we come down, you can see we've got the ability also to come in and work with options. So if you wanted to set up a front-end option section, so your clients and so on could upload their logo, set things like their title of the website and so on, you could do that using this plugin as well. And if we open up the options section, you can see we've got things that allow me to integrate these into the design. So things like opening hours, the email address that's going to be used, telephone numbers, and so on. We can even let them use their own custom profile, so we can edit their profile on there, including things like setting their password, their email address, first name, bio information, and so on. And if you wanted to, you could also set this up inside your custom dashboard to allow registered users with the right permissions to be able to add new users should you want to allow them to. But like I say, the beauty of this is it's all front end, nothing required for the dashboard. So take a look at easy front end posting and editing for Elementor. Super plugin. Now, if you've followed this channel for any period of time, or you've taken a look at any of my dynamic content tutorials, you've probably seen Ele or Elementor Custom Skin being featured in there quite a lot. Well, in this section, we're going to be taking a look at the Pro version. Now, the Pro version has basically 3 extra key features that it brings to the table. Now, these may be things that you have no use for, at which point the free version, perfectly fine, you can keep on using that. But if you do have need for these, they're very, very useful. And if you already know how to use Ele Custom Skin, it's going to be a pretty simple thing to do. So let's just jump over now and take a look at what they are and how they work. So next on my list is one of those plugins that just expands upon the free version and gives you some extra options. And the free version is one of those plugins that I use on pretty much every advanced custom fields based website, and not just ACF websites. If you're using pods or tool sets, you can reference the data as long as you're using Elementor Pro inside Elementor Custom Skin. Now the Pro version adds in some extra things as well. So if we take a look at the Pro features, you'll see while there's not a huge amount, there are things that can be quite useful in the right circumstances. So this is one of those plugins that kind of gets a little bit of an honorable mention because the free version does so much, but the Pro version add some extra things in there. And for me, I think supporting these developers that are creating these smaller plugins that do something very specific and do it very, very well is vital to create a flourishing ecosystem to bridge those gaps where Elementor Pro and Elementor don't really cater for. Things like when we're working with advanced custom fields and those dynamic facilities. So for me, this is one of those plugins that's really useful. So we've got 3 key different things that we have as part of the Pro version: the display mode, the alternating templates, and dynamic everywhere. Now the alternating templates, let me just show you that first of all, because this is quite useful if you want to create something that's a little bit more unique. What you can do is you can create 2 different layouts and then you can combine those for a left and a right section. So you could see as the first example, we've got content on the left hand side, picture on the right, and then the next one is image on the left hand side and content on the right. So you can see we could create 2 different templates and then we can use those to get a layout that looks very similar to this. Some additional examples, you can see different color options. So the layout is exactly the same, just the color options. And if we come down, there's a third example. Now, these are not visually that great to look at. They're very, very basic, and they could be expanded upon to get something a little bit more inspiring. But the technology behind it is more important than the way these have actually been presented. So that, first of all, is the way to have these alternating templates. The next thing we have is the display mode. So again, if we come into the display mode, this gives us the ability to set things up on how we want to output our data. So the first one you can see is to use a simple slider. This is a post slider. So these are individual posts, and they could, again, like I say, be advanced custom fields based. They could have extra fields inserted in there. So it's very useful. And again, if you come to the second example, we've got a masonry layout. So if you don't have the same height, you can make sure that everything still looks good by using the masonry layout. So these are more visual than they are sort of like from a technical point of view, but it's still very useful to have. And the third example is to have the same height. This is one of those areas that if you have a layout where each of the different sections are different sizes, doesn't necessarily look that great. So that's the second example I want to show you. And then there's dynamic everywhere. So if we see details on there, you can see this will say we can use keywords. So it says every keyword that looks like inside these curly braces, keyword, double curly brackets, will be replaced with the actual value. So we can pull in post object, query variables, and so on. So this is a little bit more of an advanced thing, and probably most users wouldn't really need to tap into doing this. But the other features are very useful. And if you want these kinds of more advanced features where we can tap into these keywords, then you have that as part of the plugin. That basically is Elementor Custom Skin Pro. A couple of extra features over the free version, but support for this kind of project and the things that it does bring, if you have a use for them, is very, very useful. So next up, we have Search WP. Now there are several different search tools and plugins you could use when it comes to working with WordPress and ACF and so on, but this is one that I've used for quite a few tutorials, and I also use it on the new WPTuts website because it's incredibly powerful, simple to use, and it integrates nicely with one of the other plugins we're going to take a look at in a moment. So let's just jump over, take a look at Search WP and why I would recommend this as being the search tool in which you invest your time, effort, and money into. Search WP just makes the whole process of setting up a search when you're working with things like advanced custom fields a lot simpler, especially if you have a bigger website, for example, a business listing website, a job search website, and you created that with a tool like ACF. Search WP is going to be very, very useful for you. It's not the cheapest plugin in the world, but then again, what it does very, very well. So if you're using this for paying clients, then this is going to give them a great user experience. So let me first of all just show you how it works, and then I'll show you what's available inside the dashboard side of things. So on my demo food site, I'm using Search WP as the main search section. So all I need to do is type in something that I want to find. We'll go for chili, for example, and we'll hit enter to run that search, and you see that takes us now through to our search results. So it's doing exactly what you'd expect it to do. It's searching your data. But like I said earlier on, if you're using ACF, normal WordPress search doesn't search for your sort of content inside your ACF fields. It ignores it completely. It will only pull up data from your normal fields, your normal content from your posts and your pages and so on. So straight out of the box, we need some kind of search facility to be able to do it. So it's very simple, does what you expect. It's written on the tin basically. But let's just jump into the dashboard and see what's going on behind the scenes. Now I've set this up so it only searches the recipes in this particular example because I'm not using normal WordPress posts or pages for anything other than just basic content that doesn't need to be searched against. So I've stripped everything else out of there, so we're only searching inside the recipes custom post type. If we expand that out, you can see we've got a couple of different parameters. Now at the time of releasing this video, it's version 3 point something. Version 4 is due out, which opens up even more options. So I will be taking a look at Search WP 4 when it releases, and we'll take a look at some of the new things that are coming in there. But you're still going to find fundamentally the same as what you're going to see in this particular video, probably just some extra features that'll make it even more powerful than what it currently is. So what we can do is we can apply weight to any of the content that makes up our custom post type or our post, whatever it is we're kind of searching against. So you can see we can set a value, a weight multiplier for the title, the content, and the slug. We can, if we want to, just keep on adding attributes. So if you had custom post types with lots and lots of different fields, some of those you may want to be able to search against. Other things you may think, well, actually there's no reason for the customer or client or end user to search for those particular types of information. Well, you can pull those out and only include the actual attributes that you want to search against. And then you can set the actual weight multiplier to those to say how important the content inside any of those particular attributes is going to be. So as you can see, for me, the title is probably the most important, the content about 50%, and then the slug about 60%. But like I say, if I wanted to add additional attributes, I can add taxonomies, custom fields, whatever I want to inside there. We've also then got the option to do things like exclude. We can also come in and say transfer weight to a single post ID. So there's a lot of options on how we can search things inside here. Once we've actually set this search up, we can then run an index, and that will go through and find out all of the different entries that pull out information inside all these fields. So it indexes all those, puts them into a database. So when we're searching, so when someone is on our front end of our site and they're searching, they're going to search on all of that data that's already been indexed. It's not going to be working on immediate live data. It's going to work on that index data. So it strips out all the stuff we don't care about and only includes the stuff that we do, and just ultimately speeds up the whole way of returning your search results. We can also do things like come into the advanced section, and inside there we can do things like set up stop words, synonyms. So if we don't want to search again things like, as they would consider, stop words and about, those kinds of words, we can strip those out. We can add extra stop words if we want to. We can use synonyms inside here. So currently there's nothing set up for synonyms, but if you wanted to, you could easily add synonyms inside there. You could save all that out. You can come over to the actions and settings section, and you can see we can reset the index, wake up the indexer, restore notices, and we've got a pile of options. Now, this isn't a tutorial on how to use Search WP, but hopefully what you can see is it's an incredibly powerful plugin. It opens up a ton of options, and it's just a great search tool. So next up, we're going to be taking a look at Facet WP. Now, Facet WP is a great way of being able to create comprehensive filters for your site and link that through to data you may have created with tools like Advanced Custom Fields. So it could be things like taxonomies, tags, all those kinds of things. So let's just jump over now and take a look at what Facet WP offers. So Facet WP is the easiest way to set up filtering. And let's just take a quick look at what it does, because Facet WP out of the box is at core a basic filtering option, but there's also a ton of extra options that you can add to this, extra add-ons that open up even more options available to you to create a really complex and comprehensive filtering system. So you can see we've got the ability for smart filtering, user existing data, it's lightning fast, works with most themes, and all those kinds of things. So some great selling points just there. But if we come over to the add-on section as well, you can see we've got things like a map facet, and it calls lots of things facets, because at the end of the day, it's Facet WP. So this would allow us to easily come in and set up map options and have multiple pins which we can filter out and search against and all those kinds of things, all built inside Facet WP itself. Come back out of there, you can see it's got built-in Elementor integration, so you can integrate this into the Elementor editor to make the whole process of integrating your sort of filtering side of things into your layouts a lot easier. And you can see there's a lot of different things. We can set up caching on there, hierarchy select. So if you've got things like that have a structured hierarchy, for example, you might have a manufacturer, and once you go to manufacturer, the next drop-down list could be the model of a vehicle, for example. And then when you click on the model of a vehicle, you may have a different subsection for it, like based upon the engine size or something. So this is a hierarchy select, and it can be incredibly useful for things like vehicle searches, for business searches where you want to use a location, a business type, and so on, and also things like property searches if you're building a real estate-based website. So you can see there's a ton of different things inside there for the add-ons, but what is it exactly does it look like? Well, let's just jump over to a page where I've got Facet WP set up with a couple of different filters already configured. Currently we have a filter for the meal type, the calories, and by the number of servings. So now we can start filtering things out. As you can see, we've got a count by the side of these to tell you exactly how many particular recipes are in that section. And then we've got things like filtering by calories. So these meal types, that's a taxonomy. The calories are basically a custom field inside each individual recipe. So you can see you can reference different types of data and use that information. So let's just say you want to try a different range of recipes with different calorie counts. We can filter that down. That'll filter it out to show us any of the recipes that match that particular calorie count. So we'll just say we're going to go for a very specific range between 227 and 313. And you can see that just shows us one individual recipe. But what else you can see is that when you do this, it also shows the additional filters and the effect on those. So at the moment, using this calorie range as our only kind of filter that we're applying, you can see it tells us that we've only got 2 recipes inside the dinner and lunch, one in each, which is pretty much the same recipe. Also sets up and shows you the number of servings for this particular recipe. So we can use any of these in conjunction with each other. So it's very easy to sort of set the calories up and then say, we only want to see inside that calorie count, there's a dessert. Click on there and that gives us exactly that result. So it's a very simple way of setting these facets up to filter basically multiple different criteria if you want to. So let's just jump over into the dashboard and let's take a look at Facet WP and how things are set up. Again, we've got the indexing option, so whenever you create a new facet, you're going to run that indexer to make sure it goes through all your data and finds out exactly what matches the various different criteria inside those facets. So let's open up the recipe type as an example. I'm going to click to open that up and you can see we've labeled it recipe types, and this is just the label that you want to give it. You've then got the facet type, and you can see we've got checkboxes, drop downs, hierarchy, and so on. I've also got the hierarchy select, which is that hierarchy add-on. So if I wanted to use that, I've got that inside there. The shortcode, which is basically what we would use then inside either WordPress itself, or in this example where I'm using Elementor, I can drop that shortcode inside there. And then you can see we've got things like parent terms, hierarchical. So if we are using hierarchical data, then we can specify this is using that. Show ghosts is basically what it's doing there, where it ghosts these things out where they're no longer relevant. So we've got a lot of different options inside here. We can configure this any way we want. If we hop back into our list of facets and we open up the calorie slider, for example, this time, you can see we've got different options. Because basically whatever facet type you choose, there will be relevant options to that specific facet type. Again, you can see this is using the slider, so we've got a nice sliding range inside there. The data source, so we can choose what source we want to use to fill out the information and what we want to use to filter against. And we've also got other data sources, prefix, suffix, and so on. So you can set this up however you need for each individual facet. Then you just run the indexer and you'll start to work with that particular facet throughout your site. So it's very, very easy to work with. And the reason that I sort of use Facet WP as opposed to some of the other options that are out there is because it'll actually integrate with Search WP. So if you want to use Search WP as the search field inside Facet WP, you can do that. And then you're harnessing the power of those two plugins together to make sure that your filtering and your searching is first of all integrated into your site and working flawlessly, but also integrating with each other. So whatever you search for, you can then subsequently filter with the facets that you set up on top of the search result. Hope that makes sense, but it does, like I say, open up a ton of options to use those two plugins together cohesively. Now, if Search WP and Facet WP kind of comes in a little bit expensive and you don't mind delving into documentation and some trial and error, this other option is something that's worth considering. So we're going to take a look at Search and Filter Pro. It does very similar functions to what you have inside Search WP and Facet WP, but it isn't the most user-friendly environment. However, if you can get past that, it has a ton of options and should suffice for lots and lots of use cases. So we're going to jump back over now into the dashboard and we're going to take a quick look at how this works, how it works on the front end, and the options you have inside the dashboard to work with Search and Filter Pro. So why don't I recommend Search and Filter Pro over Search WP and Facet WP? Primarily because it's not as easy to set up. It's as powerful, but the setup process is a little bit more complex. First of all, let's just take a quick look at what you get from Search and Filter Pro. First of all, you can see we're going to get, it's a blazingly fast plugin. You can power up, you can create advanced filters for your taxonomies, custom fields, post meta, and so much more. Works with pretty much any theme. You've got good support, all those kinds of things. So pretty much the same as what you get with Facet WP and so on. However, the price is a lot cheaper. If you want, just for a single site, it's going to cost you $20, or developer, so you can have unlimited sites, and again, this is for 12 months, it's going to cost you $75. So the cost is a lot cheaper. The second benefit, I suppose, is the fact that the searching and the filtering are all inside the individual plugin itself. You're not using two plugins in conjunction with each other. So there are benefits to it. And if you're happy to sort of look past those more complex setup and get your head around it, this is probably a better option for most users. Not everyone, because there can be specific cases where you may need a facility that's built into something like Facet WP. So that's the actual website. Let's just jump over and take a quick look at a basic search and filter that I've set up. Now this is just on a test site where I just test out various different things. As you can see on the right hand side, I've got a search and I've also got the filter option. So if we click on the filter, you can see it live filters and updates in real time on screen in front of me. I can use the search if I want to. So let's just say I wanted to do something like search for the focus. We'll just type in focus and we'll hit, well, we don't need to hit enter because it's live update, it's Ajax. So you can see that now will filter out. If I wanted to, I could still use these manufacturer filters as well. So if we had multiple vehicles that matched a particular search term that we typed in, we could then filter it down even further. So it works in fundamentally the same kind of way as what I've said with Search WP integrating into Facet WP. So it works very, very similar. However, let's take a look at the dashboard itself. And you can see what I mean now about the complexity. So I created that test search filter, and that includes the various different filters, the different searches, and so on. Click and open this up. you can see that inside here we've got a ton of different tabs and a lot of other options. So just on the get-go, it already looks a little less user-friendly and a little less sort of streamlined in what you'd see with something like Search WP and Facet WP. However, like I say, the functionality is there. We can search based upon exactly what fields we want, custom fields, icons, vehicles, all those kinds of different things. The number of results per page, auto-submit the forms, so it'll use Ajax. We can go through and configure how we want to display the results, the posts, the tags, categories, and taxonomies, post meta, advanced, the available fields we want to use. All those kinds of different things are inside there, including the different kind of form elements. So you can see currently I've got a search form and I've got the taxonomy filter, and I've configured those in the relevant details. But it was just one of those plugins that there's a lot of documentation. It's not necessarily that user-friendly from the get-go. But I would say that once you kind of get used to how it all works, you probably could fly through setting things up quite quickly and easily. But for me, the biggest bonus factor of this is the cost that's involved in the fact that both the search and the filtering are all inside the one plugin. So it's definitely worth taking a look at. And for the sake of $20, so you could purchase a copy and test it out to see if it matches your requirements and if you could get your head around it, it's worth investing in to see how it all works and if it kind of answers those questions for you. So next up, we have my honorable mentions. These are plugins and tools that I think are worth considering, but their technical support, their documentation, things like that may let down the whole experience. So if you're comfortable getting your hands dirty, getting stuck in and seeing how these tools work, with knowing that support may not be there as quick as you may need it, then it's worth considering. Plus, the price is not bad either. So let's just jump over now and take a look at the first of those, which is P.NET or PAFE, which is a plugin that has a ton of options when working with Elementor and Elementor Pro. So the first of the honorable mentions is P.NET add-ons for Elementor, or PAFE as it's kind of more known. Now, why didn't I use this? Why haven't I set this up as being one of those highly recommended plugins? Primarily, it's not because of the feature set, because this is, again, very much like dynamic content for Elementor. It's a Swiss Army knife with tons of really, really useful different options. It's not particularly expensive to purchase. An unlimited copy or lifetime version is currently $60. So if you just want to test this out for $60, it's nothing for what you can potentially do with it. But what I kind of felt was that one of the areas that I think is a little lacking, and this is based upon not so much my own experience, but more the experience that I've seen on the WP Crew Facebook page and also some of the other Facebook pages to do with Elementor, is that both the support and the documentation is not always on par with what you would expect. If you're paying for a plugin, support is something that is vital, as is the documentation on how to use it, especially when you have a plugin with so many options. And just to give you an example of some of these options, if we take a look, we've got the form builder on all the different stages, the different extensions, the widgets. All of these are individual components that have a lot of options available inside them. They are very, very powerful. And like I say, I've tested this out. I've used it in a couple of videos. As long as you kind of accept the fact that the documentation is going to be great and the support may take longer than you'd expect, but you kind of weigh that up with the price that you're paying for it, it's up to you. So this is why it didn't make it into my top 6 of those kind of required plugins that you really, really need to have. The next one is Jet Engine. Now you may be thinking, well, why would I want to use Jet Engine if I'm using advanced custom fields? Well, Jet Engine, even though it's got its own sort of custom fields, meta fields, and so on, tools built in, you can use a lot of what you can do with Jet Engine with ACF. So if you wanted to have all the formatting options, all the filtering options, the searching, the querying, and all those kinds of things, but still use ACF because that's what you're most accustomed to, you could combine this with Jet Engine. Now, would I recommend doing this? Because you're fundamentally duplicating some of the actual main key areas that you're working with, those meta fields and so on. It's not always the best way of working. It could have a slowdown effect on your website, but sometimes there may be a case where you just need the functionality that Jet Engine gives you, but you still want to work with ACF. Then it may be worth taking a look at Jet Engine. And again, the cost for a single license is something like $19. So if you just wanted to use this to test it and see what the implications would be from a speed point of view, from an actual feature point of view, for me, it's one of those things that I would say is a little bit of a no-brainer. I would Grab it, test it out, and see what you think, and if it's something you think would be useful for you later on down the line inside working with ACF. So there you have it. Those are the tools that I would recommend taking a look if you're happy to invest some money and some time and effort into learning these tools to get more out of Elementor Pro and Advanced Custom Fields. As always, all the applicable links for everything I've covered are in that description below. Like I say, some of those may be affiliate links and it gives a small percentage back to the channel, but costs you absolutely no more money whatsoever. As always, my name is Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.